Hey YouTube, and welcome back to another TBG video, and in this one we will be going over and testing the Cities Skylines 2 video game with different settings of resolution, quality of graphics with our PC build. We have an AMD Ryzen 9 7900X 12-core processor paired with an RTX 3060 Ti and 64GB of G.Skill 6000 DDR5 Ram. So we'll go through this starting with all of the game's standard settings, starting with 1080p resolution and very low settings, working our way all the way up to the high graphics settings, and then swapping over to my native screen PC screen settings of 1440p and going from very low to high again. We will then finish off with what the developer is recommending for settings and fine-tuning it to what we think our custom PC build might be able to handle. Starting out with 1080p very low graphics, you can tell that the graphics are quite a bit blocky. You can't really tell what's in the distance, and overall visual is rough. On the positive side, our GPU usage is only at 90%, which we're pushing an average of 65 FPS. Jumping from there is the low settings, where our FPS drops by nearly 25 FPS, all the way down to 40, but we will say that this feels like the biggest jump in overall graphics in the game in overall looks. Jumping all the way up to 1080p medium graphics, there's a most noticeable detail upgrade in the sky, water, and backyard details, with some slight color differences, and the homes do look more detailed. We're now averaging a 30 FPS average, meaning a drop of 10 FPS. With sitting at 30 being the developer's goal in mind, we're now finally at a stage at a 1080p resolution and our 3060 Ti where the developers actually want us to be sitting at, but it's not necessarily what we are actually happy with. Jumping into 1080p high graphics, we're now looking at even better clouds, landscaping, and water details. The buildings have sharpened up a small amount, and now smokestacks are just a little more clear, but this is all at a cost of yet another 10 to 15 FPS, with us now averaging 17 frames per second, and it's honestly starting to look like a bit of a choppy PowerPoint presentation. Now we're going to swap over to our native gaming monitor resolution at very low graphics. The screen does look better, but only because the screen native resolution is there. In terms of the game's looks, color, sharpness, sky, water, etc., it looks almost the exact same as the very low graphics of the 1080p resolution. Currently, we're averaging 60 FPS with the jump in the screen resolution, which is only a 5 FPS loss. As now we jump to low resolution, we're seeing all the same details but on a wider resolution, and the current FPS is in the same scale, with being a 5 FPS loss from the 1080p resolution and now sitting at 35. Overall, the game still looks okay for us, and the FPS is more than okay with it being a city builder game. Bumping the graphics up to medium, we start to see small gaps in the graphics terms of what we can actually see compared to the 1080p resolution. The water, sky, grass, home details are looking better than what we could see before, and we think that this jump in monitor size is starting to actually create a gap here. The FPS has dropped by 25 at this point though, still being about 5 below what the 1080p resolution was, with their recommended settings of the resolution helping out in performance, and it's holding up for the most part. As we jump into the high resolution, there's a clear distinction in graphics, performance, and the overall looks of the game. Not only is our 1440p game really slowing down at this point, but it does look a lot better if it wasn't for the overall choppiness and still sitting at that 5 FPS below the 1080p resolution settings. Now the 1440p with the recommended settings, the game looks really good at this point in time. This is honestly looking a lot like the high settings that the game intended for it to be at, except for we have a slight FPS increase compared to what the high settings were at. Now we're sitting at closer to 22 FPS, and at least in our opinion, we feel that the game is pretty playable at this point in time. It's not where we would like to be at, somewhere between 30 and 60, but we can certainly deal with the 22 FPS. Now, every PC is going to be a little bit different, but we hope that this video actually helped you out in the end. Personally for us, what ended up hurting us the most was the depth of field mode, the level of detail, and the motion blur. we actually were able to turn up the volumetric quality all the way to high and still maintain a 21 FPS, and it honestly improved the look of the game. We're excited for the new patches in hopes that they actually increase the usage of CPU power, just because we noticed that our GPU was being throttled at 95% plus the entire time that we were doing this testing. If they start to manage to shift everything over to the CPU, we think that this game is going to start looking really good. Overall, we feel that the game is looking good, and there's a lot of little details that could be fixed, but this is what is, in our opinion, is to be expected of today's video games. We hope that this video helped you out, and if it did, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. Otherwise, we will see you guys in the next episode. Happy gaming. Peace.